So when my youngest son had just turned 2, my wife and I had a very difficult conversation, and I cannot remember who it was who first asked the question, but I remember the heaviness that it hung out with in the air as one of us asked, do you think that we should get him screened for ASD, for autism spectrum disorder? There were several developmental markers that he was not hitting, and we were beginning to grow concerned. So we met with the folks at his daycare and kind of got their input on things, and then we filled out all of the paperwork, and then we waited for 18 months to hear back. And things were, of course, kind of backed up, and it took them that long to get us in. So we get them screened, and sometimes people will ask me, they'll say, well, whenever you heard that news, you heard the word autism, did it take you back? And I always say, no, after 18 months, I was not telling me much I didn't know after 18 months. I was pretty well aware by that point in time, actually. But as we got that news, we began to try to educate ourselves as parents as best we could. And I thought that I knew quite a bit. I work in education, and I write IEPs and 504 plans, and my wife is a nurse, and so she deals with that sort of thing often. But educating herself as a parent was much, much different. We began reading all sorts of different material, looking at websites. There was one website in particular that was a reputable, scholarly medical website. But there was one statistic that really kind of gave us some pause. And it was over average life expectancy for someone with ASD. And there was no medical reason that I could figure out why someone with ASD would have a shorter average life expectancy. But as they say with numbers, sometimes numbers lie, especially in dealing with averages. That crazy high numbers and crazy low numbers are going to throw off an average. And it turned out, as we began digging into those numbers, that the number was brought down significantly because of kids with autism and their tendency to wander, that they are little wanderers. And because of the ones who do happen to wander off into some place with busy traffic or some place where there's no one to take care of them, that number was brought down significantly just by those. And let me tell you, it's very, very concerning. It's enough to cause you concern often because my little guy is a wanderer. I think the folks that I work with at school, sometimes as other teachers and people bring in their kids to play during the summer while they work in their rooms, and sometimes they'll say, well, let's meet and let's get something done, and the kids can go play in the hallway. And I'll say, no, we can't do that. Go play in the gym. No, we can't do that. He will wander off. And it's always sort of a guessing game sometimes as to where he's going to be whenever he wanders off. And your hope is that he will never wander off somewhere so far that you can't find him, because he's going to wander. And I know that he's going to wander because he is a wanderer, and that's what wanderers do. But my hope and my prayer is that he never wanders off that far. One time I was talking to another parent who has a child with ASD, and someone asked them, how long do you usually look for your child for when they wander off? And I think what they meant was, how long does it normally take you to find them? But my friend that I was talking to, I think, was almost borderline like offended. And how long do I look for them? Well, as long as it takes to find them. Like, that's my child, and it doesn't matter how long it takes to search them out, and no longer how long does it take to find them. I'm going to put that work in. It's my child. I'm not going to prop up my feet and say, oh, well, done for the day. I'm going to keep on looking until I find them. And I have found that to be true for my child as well. In the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, Jesus is giving a series of different parables. And all of these three parables right in a row seem to follow this same structure. That in each of them there is an item of great value that is lost, and then a search is undertaken to find this lost item. And then once they find it, there's a celebration that takes place that they have found what was lost. And in the beginning of Luke chapter 15, Jesus gives the parable of the lost sheep, that someone was watching over some sheep, and they lost one, and they leave the 99 to go and find the one, and when they find it, they celebrate. And then we have the parable of the lost coin, that a woman has lost this coin that has great value to her, and she sweeps and she cleans and she does all of these things, and then whenever she finds it, she rejoices and she celebrates. And then it's almost like Jesus says, now let's get real. And he gives this parable that has several different layers to it. But what really always has caught my eye, and what has always stuck out in my mind, has been the end of this parable. In this parable, we sometimes call it the parable of the prodigal son, or the parable of the lost son. But this man has two sons. One of his sons says that he wants his share of the inheritance now. And the Bible tells us that he goes off to this distant country. Whenever he goes off to this distant country, he squanders his wealth on wild living, spends his entire inheritance, and then this great famine breaks out, and he ends up feeding pigs and sleeping with pigs, longing to fill his stomach with the food that they feed to the pigs. Now, for us, that is gross, but we think about a Jewish community and Jewish leaders listening to this that think of pigs as being like the ultimate unclean animal, can't touch them, can't eat them, can't anything. And what they hear is that this kid has gone from a bad situation to the worst situation, like rock bottom, and then you keep on going down. And then this son finally says, okay, I'll get up and I'll go to my father. I'll make this I'm sorry speech, and maybe, like just maybe, he'll allow me to come back in and be like one of his hired servants. And so this kid goes on his way back home, and I'm sure the entire time he is dreading this conversation with his father. But then what we find is actually something quite different. And it tells us in the Bible, in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 15, that the father, it tells us in verse number 20, that while the son was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran, he threw his arms around his neck, and he kissed him. And the son said, Father, I've sinned against heaven and in your sight. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father told his servants, quick, bring out the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Then bring out the fattened calf and slaughter it, and let's celebrate with a feast. Because this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is now found. And they began to celebrate. And to go back a little bit there, within that text, the son is apologizing. The son is walking up in the horizon, working up this little I'm sorry speech, and the father sees him and runs to him. Now, logically, that doesn't make sense, that the father just so happened to be standing in this place where his son had, so long ago walked away or whatever. It fits in with this series of three parables fits in with the other two parables. What that tells us is the father was searching for him. He was already out looking for his son. You know what I've found to be true in my own faith? There's probably been a few times that I've looked at my Heavenly Father and said, okay, that's it. I'm walking away from your house. Give me my share of the inheritance. I'm gone. Most of the time, whenever I have found myself to be in a distant country, I didn't mean to get there. I just wandered. Like I took one step, and then I took another step, and then I took another step. Then I look up, and it's nothing that's familiar. My Father's house is nowhere to be found. And I never meant to head off to a distant country, but yet here I am. and I'm so very far from anything that is familiar to me. It's really funny to watch my son whenever he goes into one of his wandering modes. Sometimes you can watch him with like a bird's eye view, like a fly on the wall, and it's like he'll just wander from room to room to room, and then he'll look up and just kind of look around. And in those moments, I want him to know that I'm actively looking for him. He is not on his own, and he is not by himself, because a good father will do whatever it takes to look for, to track down, and to find his son. It's been said before, there's a difference between religion and the Christian faith. That religion is man's search for God, that we're trying to explain God, we're trying to understand God, we're trying to know who He is. But the Christian faith really is God's search for man. Jesus even said that the Son of Man came to seek and save that which was lost. And it all even goes back to the Garden of Eden. Is Adam and God had this perfect communion, this perfect fellowship, and then as Adam sinned and rebelled against God, we remember that he went and hid, and God goes and seeks him out and says, Adam, where are you? And over the course of time, what we've done is we've created more and more obstacles for him to find us. And that was exactly the purpose of Jesus' life and ministry. And John the Baptist put it this way. He said that they're going to lay low every mountain and raise up every valley. Those obstacles that we have put in place between us and God, Jesus came to shatter those so that he could find us. And there's no obstacle that we can place in the way that is too high or too low for him to get to us. Think about the mountain of the law that we cannot keep. He came to fulfill that, to knock that out of the way. We think of the valley full of sins that we've committed that separate us from him. He came to lift that up so that we could have fellowship, so we could have community, to seek us out in the places we are, so that he could know us. There's no obstacle that's going to stop the good Father from finding his Son. There was one occasion where the wandering probably got sort of a worst case scenario. And at the time, my family was living in an apartment in a downtown area right across the street from the courthouse, actually. A very, very busy street, which is not ideal. And the apartment that we were living in had one entrance, one exit, and it was on the ground floor. And we were getting ready to go somewhere, and I was getting this stuff together, and my oldest child comes and he says, hey, I can't find my brother. And I said, what? And we went and looked, and the door had been unlocked. And we look out in the street, and there's just traffic everywhere. And me and my oldest child both have an absolute meltdown. We cannot find my youngest son. We cannot find him anywhere. And so I go, and in that moment, it was determined I've got to find him. And I stop traffic. I go and I start pulling people out of their vehicles, and I'm trying to describe my son. I say, he even has a kind of a speech delay, so even if he's yelling out for us, we might not be able to hear him. I have people who are directing traffic. I'm pulling people out to instruct individuals to drive slowly. There's several little boutique shops around this apartment, and I was going in each one and asking if they had seen him, and I'm just screaming all around town. And I walk into this one that was directly next to our apartment, and then I hear a sound. And so I hear the sound, and I'm thinking through the wall, that sounds like it's coming from our apartment. And I go into our apartment, I don't see him. And then I just so happen to flip open the lid to the washing machine. And there he was, and he had been in the washing machine the entire time, and he had never actually left. And it was really quite a moment of relief. And it's sometimes kind of funny looking back on it. Sometimes it is just more trauma inducing than anything, looking back on it. But regardless, I made it up in my mind at that moment that I would not stop looking for him. The obstacle did not matter. No matter how long it took, no matter how many obstacles I had to climb and get through, I was going to find my way to get to Him. And our Father is the same. Our Father's going to undergo any obstacle whatsoever it takes to get to us. And the Bible tells us that He even took on flesh and made His dwelling among us to come and find us so that He could have communion with us. And so in those moments where we stray, whether it is on purpose or maybe we just wandered step by step and now we've sort of drifted away, regardless, He searches for us.